Another big story, obviously, that we've been following closely, though, is what's going on in the ground in Afghanistan.
Yeah, so it's August 30th right now, and that means the evacuation is beginning to wind down. August 31st, the deadline for removing troops there. President Biden, the administration, all basically saying that we're not going to give way. And so obviously we haven't been able to update you all since that horrific attack on American soldiers at the Abbey Gate at the Hamid Karzai International Airport. It killed 13 U.S. service members and dozens, and I mean up to 200 number of Afghans, including young women and children. ISIS Khorasan, which is the ISIS Afghan affiliate, Khorasan meaning like Afghanistan and Pakistan, that group is the one that claimed responsibility for the attack. It was a complex suicide attack that, clearly was a direct hit on American service members. I watched the briefing right afterwards from General McKenzie, and the way he put it just makes it seem so grim, and it really highlights what we ask of our service members, which is he's like, look, we have to screen these people. Somebody's got to look them eye to eye. That has to be an American service member.
Yeah.
And to process those people, there's no way to avoid that. It just shows you what immense danger they're in, even after, number of checkpoints and more. But let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen from the New York Times. The evacuations from Kabul are beginning to wind down in the several hundred to thousand. We're not seeing the removal of like 12 to 13 to 20,000 people per day. The current number stands at around 100,000. The American citizen number is relatively unclear. Right now, as of what I have been able to find, the most updated figure is 500 American citizens who are left somewhere in Afghanistan. The difficulty, though, Krystal, is that per the administration, several hundred of these people don't want to leave. Many of them want to stay. Some of them are dual citizens. Some of them have families who aren't necessarily could qualify for leaving. Some businesses, whatever. It's a complicated situation. Some of those people, they do not want to leave Afghanistan. The remainder of those people, basically, the fate is relatively up in the air at this point. We'll get to the deal that is struck in a second, but let's go ahead and put this next one up there on the screen in terms of what is happening on the ground. So you'll recall that after that attack, the president said, we're going to hunt down, we're going to kill whoever's responsible for this. Well, we had a U.S. airstrike actually in the city of Kabul, which, quote, eliminated a vehicle with a substantial amount of explosive material that posed a, quote, imminent ISIS-K threat to the Kabul airport. And we wanted to bring you this, especially given the news most recently, which is that attack not only killed whoever this ISIS-K person is, but it also killed a lot of women and children. Yeah. I think it's like 9 children surrounding that entire thing. I cannot think of an incident which just shows you the horrors of war and exactly why I think both of us are very resolute about wanting to get out in the first place, which is who are the ones who ultimately pay the price for all of this? The people who were killed in Afghanistan, the American service members, were between like 20 and 31 years old. Think about that. And the majority of them were in their 20s. Like, we have some profiles of, we have a photo there of some of their caskets coming back with the president attended a dignified transfer yesterday. That's that's what drives it home about who are the people who pay the price for this war. Throw the New York Times tear sheet up there. Some of them were, one of them was 20 years old, had a baby on the way, 3 weeks, just had it on the way, the announcement, staff sergeants, 2 women, one of whom had posted a photo of herself with a baby. You can see her there, Marine Corps Sergeant Nicole Lee Gee of Sacramento, California, who said, quote, I love my job. And she posted there with a child. And, she saved that child, but there's a lot of other children that died in Kabul in just the last, 24 hours. And it just highlights how horrific this entire thing is. And so, you look at what's happened, and there's been so much political hay that have been tried to make around all of this, but all it does is drive to me both the horrors of war and why we needed to get the hell out in the first place. Yeah, I have seen, Krystal, there's a lot of, like I said, amateur logisticians and out there who are, so they're pointing to a very pivotal moment in the fall of Kabul, which is that in Doha, there was a meeting between CENTCOM's commander, who is the U.S. commander of all forces in the Middle East, and this political representative of the Taliban. And the Taliban is like, look, either you can take control of the city of Kabul, or we can do it and you guys take the airport and you get your people out. And people are saying, look, see, we had a chance to hold Kabul. Let me tell you, everybody here something. I happen to remember a little battle called Fallujah, and I remember how even a huge force of Marines were unable to fight and hold this city. And I also remember the surge in Baghdad, in which it took, what, tens of thousands of troops in order to hold that city. What you saw in that suicide attack at Hamid Karzai International Airport was a cakewalk compared to what it would have looked like to hold the entire city of Kabul, a city of 6 million with multiple checkpoints.
Insane.
We would have had to deploy all the forces in all of CENTCOM's region to even attempt such a gamble. And then what would it have meant? What did I already say about having to look people eye to eye whenever you're at a checkpoint? This is how many of our troops died in Iraq, holding these checkpoints, suicide-borne, vehicle-borne IEDs that come and crash into and kill everybody. That happened over and over and over again. So there's a lot of criticism right now around the withdrawal, but I just want to highlight what the alternative was. The alternative was holding this city. And that means many, many, many more American dead.
People pretend like all of these actions, including staying indefinitely, are without risk.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what everyone should see here. Every minute that our servicemen and women are on the ground, they are in dire danger.
Exactly.
Every day that you extend is another day where their lives are at risk. I don't understand how people can't see that. I mean, to me, when I see this horrific loss of life, I can't understand how anyone would look at that and say, that's why we need to stay longer?
I know.
Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And also, like you said about the Afghan civilians who were just killed in this American drone strike, including young babies, 2, 3, 4-year-old children. Is the media going to care about these particular Afghan civilians? Okay, because they seem to only care about the ones who are paying the price because of us leaving. They don't seem to care so much about the ones who are paying the price because of us staying, okay? So they only care about the cost of ending the war, not the cost over the 20 years of this war. Some of these service members, 20 years old. I mean, we're talking about they were babies on 9/11, literally.
Literally, yeah.
Literally. And they're still there fighting, losing their lives for something that happened when they were infants in their mother's arms. This is insanity. It's absolute insanity. And Glenn Greenwald said on Twitter that, you know, nothing could be a more fitting and tragic end to this war than an American drone strike killing babies and civilians, and then military commanders lying about it, which is what's happening this morning. This is horror after horror. And I cannot understand looking at this situation and saying anything other than we need to get out now, and we should have been out years and years ago. So the official evacuations, that phase is ending. As I mentioned, the deadline is tomorrow. They have already shifted to focusing on evacuating our service members from Kabul airport rather than Afghan civilians. As Saagar was saying, about 110,000 plus people have been evacuated, which is tremendously more than what anyone predicted could have possibly been accomplished, which is rather incredible given the circumstances. However, the last piece of news we have for you here is that the US and 97 other countries have announced, we can throw this tear sheet up on the screen, that they do have a deal with the Taliban to continue evacuating Afghan allies after August 31st. We still, look, it's the Taliban. No one is like taking their word for it or relying on them or trusting them, but at least there is some indication that the Taliban says they're going to allow for safe passage for our Afghan allies. So we'll continue to work with these 97 other countries to evacuate who we can in terms of American citizens and our Afghan allies after this state. So there is some hope there that at least some additional people can get out.
People have a lot of skepticism around this, and I don't blame you. But what I would tell you is to recognize the reality of the situation. We do not have either the political will or the military force right now in order to endure the number of casualties that it would require to hold the city of Kabul or to remain there indefinitely. If we stay past August 31st, then that's it. Already this morning, we saw 5 rockets that were fired at Hamid Karzai International Airport. Luckily, one of the only good things the military is decently good at in the war on terror is actually countering like rockets, right? And so that ended up working out. So that's great. But that means it would have happened incessantly, over and over. Go and talk to anybody who served in country, in Iraq and Afghanistan. At the heights, they were terrified of rockets, especially in Iraq, on these bases. And they would have alarms, and a lot of people were killed that way. So this is just to recognize that staying longer is gonna put thousands of American soldiers at risk. And we have a diplomatic ability in order to at least try to get our people out through those means. Now look, we have the ability to impose tremendous military and economic costs on the Taliban if we want to. Actually, this is the one smart things that the Biden people have been saying. The Taliban have no desire to return to the pariah state of 1999. They were under tremendous international sanction. They had no ability to trade. That's one of the reasons that their own government, given the Civil War, one of the things their opponents could point to is that actually their government was bringing shame to them internationally. So they want, more than anything, diplomatic recognition, the ability to have trade, the ability to conduct themselves as a semi-legitimate nation amongst the concert of the world. So what does that mean? Well, we have the UN and the UN Security Council. We can actually impose tremendous costs on the ability for them to conduct themselves. And second, we have this superiority of air power to do whatever we want to them militarily, even when all of our people are out. And so I would just point to that as a pretty good amount of leverage in order to see if they're gonna uphold the end of the deal.
And not to mention, we've already frozen billions of dollars in
they don't want that?
Afghan reserves.
Right.
So that's an immediate point of financial leverage. And they know they're gonna have to deliver economically. Afghanistan already, with the amount of aid dollars, US and other international aid dollars that are going out of the country right now, they recognize that the economy is basically in free fall. I mean, this is one of the other things I was reading, is just like a practical matter. The banks are closed right now. There have been protests outside of the banks. They're very worried about a run on banks. People go to the ATMs, they can't get cash out, so people are already freaking out about that. Also, frankly, one of the big cash crops in Afghanistan has been opium.
That's how they make their money. Or
the U.S. has just looked the other way in some instances. In other instances, we've partnered directly with the drug kingpins in various parts of the country. Taliban is claiming to crack down on opium production as well. We'll see, but I think this is another attempt to gain international legitimacy. But if they are in fact cracking down on opium production, that actually is a big economic issue for them as well, because this is the way that for many years, a lot of Afghan farmers have been able to earn their living. It's a largely rural country, and even though much of the land can't be farmed because it's so mountainous, you still have a majority of citizens who engage in farming as their livelihood. So they have massive economic challenges. The U.S. has a lot of financial leverage that can be applied here. I do not support the indefinite freezing of billions of dollars of Afghan reserves, by the way, because that does nothing but impose cruelty on the people of that country. But to use as a point of financial leverage to be able to get our people out and as many of our Afghan allies as possible, yes, 100%, I support that.
I completely agree with you. And anyway, all of this is to be said, look, they can be bloodthirsty murderers, but they're also bloodthirsty murderers who need to now run this country and have to try and maintain some sort of legitimacy. And people all seem to think that just because somebody, is your enemy, that they don't also have to act rationally whenever it comes to, protecting their own interests.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it, you get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.